Etasyam sadhi sandhyayam Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavana Parito Bhuta Parshadbhir Vishenatati Bhutara Etasyam sadvi sandhyayam Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavana Parito Bhuta Parshadbhir Vishenatati Bhutarat Etasyam sadvi sandhyayam Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavana Parito Bhuta Parshadbhir Vishenatati Bhutarat Etasyam sadvi sandhyayam Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavana Parito Bhuta Parshadbhir Vishenatati Bhutarat Etasyam sadvi sandhyayam Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavana Parito Bhuta Parshadbhir Vishenatati Bhutarat Etasyam sadvi sandhyayam Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavana Parito Bhuta Parshadbhir Vishenatati Bhutarat Etasyam in this period Sadhi Sandhyayam at the junction of day and night, evening, Bhagavan, the personality of God, Bhuta Bhavana, the well-wisher of the ghostly characters. Well-wisher of the ghostly characters. Paritaha, surrounded by. Bhuta Parishatvi, by ghostly companions. Krishna, on the back of the bull carrier. Atati, travels. Bhutarat, the king of the ghosts. Lord Shiva, translation and purport of his language Lord Shiva, the king of the ghosts, sitting on the back of his bull carrier, travels at this time, accompanied by ghosts who follow him for their welfare. So repeat after me. Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva. The king of the ghosts. The king of the ghosts. Sitting on the back of his carrier, travels at this time, accompanied by ghosts who follow him for their welfare. Purport. Lord Shiva or Rudra is the king of the ghosts. Ghostly characters worship Lord Shiva to be gradually guided toward a path of self-realization. Mayavadi philosophers are mostly worshippers of Lord Shiva, and Sripad Sankaracharya is considered to be the incarnation of Lord Shiva for preaching godlessness to the Mayavadi philosophers. Ghosts are bereft of a physical body because of their grievously sinful acts, such as suicide. The last resort of the ghostly characters in human society is to take shelter of suicide, either material or spiritual. Material suicide causes loss of the physical body, and spiritual suicide causes loss of the individual identity. Mayavadi philosophers desire to lose their individuality and merge into the impersonal spiritual Brahma Jyoti existence. Lord Shiva, being very kind to the ghosts, sees that although they are condemned, they get physical bodies. He places them into the wombs of women who indulge in sexual intercourse regardless of the restrictions on time and circumstance. Kashyapa wanted to impress this fact upon Diti so that she might wait for a while. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Sha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantha Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpadrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I would like to begin by first begging the blessings from the Vaishnavas. Sometimes I kind of question how I got into this position, but I realize that it's only by the blessings of the Vaishnavas I've made any seldom progress, and I'm speaking only for my encouragement, and I have very little qualification to serve. Many of you are senior to me in age and spiritual qualification, so I beg your permission to serve this class and to always serve according to Hari Guru Vaishnava. So this verse it's kind of a little bit of a scary scene if you think about it. So there are ghosts, there's bulls, and there's ghouls. There's actually a famous picture. I don't know if it's in this canto of the bull of Lord Shiva riding the bull. Maybe it's not this one, but I can show everybody during breakfast. So Diti doesn't seem very afraid of the ghost compared to what Hansrupa Prabhu spoke yesterday. The purport of that's very small. Kashyapa has already told his wife Diti to wait for a while, and now he warns her that failure to consider the particular time will result in punishment from the ghosts and evil spirits. So by Diti kind of forcing this card, by kind of pushing Kashyapa to have relations with her at this time of the night, it seems that she's not very afraid of ghosts. But for her in this circumstance, she should be afraid of being a bad mother, which is actually the implication. If she fails at being a good mother, she'll be condemned. So when Shiva was present, this is an automatic indication that is not a very good time. As Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu was saying on Saturday, if you're attracting people if you're not doing it according to what the Shastras say and what time, place, and circumstance you're at, you're attracting people who you deserve, which are actually ghosts who come into your womb and you beget children who are not very spiritually inclined. As we learn from further on in this canto, 3rd canto, 31st chapter, the spirit soul makes, it's actually very beautiful. I got gurus that every year on your birthday, 3rd canto, 31st chapter. Maybe it's something interesting. It's about the movements of the living entities, how they move along this world. And actually you see that the pure living entity is actually making prayers to Krishna. Please don't let me forget you. Please don't let me do this. But once the living entity is moving and is in the womb, then what happens? Then when the mother eats too spicy things and things, the bodies of the baby gets burned. And then and birth is actually, it confused me when I was a kid, how is birth such a bad thing? But the automatic implication of birth is death. So, but even the birthing process, if you just think about it, you're upside down for 9 months, and you're floating around in various liquids, and you come out, and immediately what the doctor does, if you're not crying already, he slaps you, so you start crying. And the 3rd canto, 31st chapter, it goes on to describe how the baby is conditioned to start, even though it's making prayers to Krishna in the womb. Or maybe even before the womb. I have to check on that. But once it's brought out, it's conditioned to eating meat according to what the parent's disposition is. So this is the unfortunate thing about all our lives. We're coming up to Janmashtami. Krishna's birth is so wonderful. He chose Devaki and Vasudeva. We never got to choose who our parents are. We were just put into the particular circumstance we're in, and that comes with why are some people born as the son and daughter of Bill Gates, who are in the lap of luxury, and why are some people born in poverty-stricken conditions, whose family of 10 they survive on $2, $5 a day? Who chooses that? None of us choose that. We'd all like to be son and daughter of somebody rich, but we're in the circumstance we're in. So Lord Shiva is very kind to the ghosts and ghouls. Actually, one major process of how you become a ghost, as was clarified by Hansarupa Prabhu yesterday, is suicide. A lot of people commit suicide. And also Hansarupa Prabhu was mentioning that even the story he was mentioning was that someone stole from a temple, and he became a ghost around that temple, around that compound at least. And where do ghosts and ghouls, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam in this verse, where are they placed? They're placed into people who have illicit sex. And whether it's between a husband and wife, or whether it's with someone else, illicit sex has no good outcome. That is, illicit sex is, why is it not recommended? It's because, what is the result? Everything is judged by the result in Vedic culture. It's not like the Nike logo, just do it, They'll say, just do it and think about it later. But actually in Vedic culture is, okay, you're doing an action, but the success of that action is, what is the result of that action? So Bhagavad Gita chapter 1 text 40 mentions this. Strishu dhushtasu varshneya jayate shankara. So if women get polluted, then the degradation of women, what's the fruit of degradation of women? Unwanted progeny. So purity of both genders is very important, but especially women, like if women become polluted, then unwanted progeny. So if there was no purity, then the world would be filled with very low class people, and if children aren't begotten properly, with Garbhadan Samskar and taking care of the baby within the womb, it's off to a bad start. It's not atato brahma jigyasa. The reason for human life is atato brahma jigyasa, to inquire about the Supreme, so you can have favorable circumstances to inquire about the Supreme. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that if you don't finish your spiritual path in this life, then you'll be born into favorable circumstances in the next life, either in the house of a brahmana or a rich family. So that's one way how civilization upgrades. Garbhadan Samskar is a very important purificatory ritual. When I was a kid, one sannyasi came to my house when I was maybe 14. He's very nice sannyasi. He preaches a lot in India, very classic Vedic style sannyasi. And one of his disciples actually came, and the disciple started speaking to the spiritual master. And I was just noticing that, and because I was a kid, it was a female disciple, but the husband wasn't present, and the spiritual master was sitting in the chair, and he needed another male to be present, so I was present. So the female disciple told the spiritual master, her spiritual master, that, Guru Maharaj, I'm actually expecting a child, and I'd like to get your blessings. And then he's like, oh, wonderful, great, all blessings. Then after she left the room, he looked at me. She said, this, it's actually not very proper. This is not the proper way to do it. She should have come to me before the beginning of the child to ask for blessings, so I may instruct. Is she even ready for having a child? What is that verse where you shouldn't become guru na sisyat, that you should not become a father, a mother, a spiritual master if you're not completely ready to deliver them back to Godhead. So the guru, he said, this is not very proper, but in Kali Yuga, what to do? If you tell them anything, they're like, okay, my guru is a fanatic. My guru is a fanatic. So this is a very important thing, that you're breeding the next generation of Krishna consciousness. So how hard it is in New York City just to give a book to somebody, and what to say, get them back to Godhead, it's like a mountain to climb. But this is actually a very easy way to spread the Krishna consciousness movement, about having very good children and consciously thinking about it. So actually we have a tendency that any purification process, we think it's actually voodoo or a bunch of hocus pocus or a bunch of dogma. But actually in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, sacrifice meant for the pleasure of Vishnu is not to be given up. So the reason we have children in the Vaishnava perspective is so they can serve Krishna. And that's one of the, so you have the sense gratification, which is the sexual relation, but after that comes responsibility. That you can't take that out of it. If not, that's just illicit relations. So if you don't have this purification process, then it's a civilization of just cats and dogs. It's dharmena hina pashubi samana. That humans who have no care for these purification, they're no better than animals. Dui pada pashu, two-legged animals. So dharmena hina pashubi samana, that you must have dharma in the center. So if you think about it, religion in its highest sense is just pure love of God. You don't really have to do any of these purification things. If you just love God, pure love of God, you just have to chant, and that's it. You don't have to do any of these purification process. But even sometimes when we're chanting, people are just severely contaminated. They're just they come walk off the street and they have 8,400,000 years of lifetimes, not years, lifetimes of just conditioning. And we're asking them to get rid of all that conditioning in one life, get rid of all that conditioning, go back to Godhead. It seems like a very big mountain to climb, but actually by the remembrance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, anything is possible. But still, people come with so much contamination. They even when they're chanting, they're committing offenses. And even after the chanting process, it may take some time to do the clearing stage. While you may be still attached to sinful things. And like a robber, Prabhupada tells a story I was just hearing this morning, that a robber wants to get purified, and he goes to the train station while everybody's sleeping, and just because of his tendency to steal things, he takes one luggage. And he's like, I'm going to take this guy's luggage and run away. But he's like, no, I shouldn't do it. And then he puts it back. And then he's like, oh, let me take this luggage. And then I put it back. And when everybody woke up, everybody's luggage was everywhere else. So, apichet suduracharo bhajte mam ananya bhak sadarevam samantavya. So that even those who are trying to get rid of these sinful contaminations, they should be considered sadhu because they're fixed in the right path. So, but still, people are very contaminated. So pure love of God is maybe the first rung of dharma. That's actually, you don't need anything else. Just chant Hare Krishna, go back to Godhead, that's it. But if you're not able to just constantly chant, what is that verse in Nectar of Instruction? That the essence of all advice is to remember the name, form, pastimes of Krishna 24 hours a day. So if you're not on that level, which it's a very difficult level to be in, Krishna gives us a path to go back home. And this is in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, which Prabhu has memorized, I think. Well, it's a good chapter for everyone to memorize. So Krishna says in verse 8, he says, just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of God, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always without a doubt. This is very echoed by Rupa Goswami in that verse in Nectar of Instruction. And Krishna understands this is a pretty lofty goal that he's setting up. So he's saying, O Arjuna, winner of wealth, if you can't fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regular principles of bhakti yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. What is the Sanskrit? Abhyasa yoga. We have to get abhyas in Kannada as abhyasa. That you have to just get used to it. It's a Kannada word. So I just like to read a little bit of the purport of what this verse is saying. This is in the fourth paragraph of the purport of practice. To practice the regular principles of bhakti yoga, this is Prabhupada's making it very clear what we should do. To practice the regular principles of bhakti yoga, one should understand the guidance of an expert spiritual master, follow certain principles. One should rise early in the morning, take a bath, enter the temple, offer prayers, chant Hare Krishna, then collect flowers to offer to the deity, cook foodstuffs to offer to the deity, take prasadam, and so on. There are various rules and regulations which one should follow, and one should constantly hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam from pure devotees. This practice can help anyone rise to the level of love of God. And then he's sure of his progress into the spiritual kingdom of God. This practice of bhakti yoga under the rules and regulations with the direction of a spiritual master will surely bring one to the stage of love of God. So Krishna is saying that if you don't have love of God yet, don't worry. Just follow the principle, the rules of bhakti yoga. And he has made it so clear about what are the rules of Bhagavad Gita, the rules of bhakti yoga. And by living in the temple, we're naturally inclined to do all these, waking up early in the morning, Mangalarti, chanting, reading, cooking stuff, foodstuffs, offering deities such nice articles. Every Ekadasi, I'm happy it's nice here too that every Ekadasi there's the Tulsi garland. It's a very, very beautiful practice. Krishna loves Tulsi garlands. But Krishna says, okay, pure love of God. Second, follow the rules. Third, let's see, we can't even follow the rules. Rules are kind of stringent. We can't even do that. So Bhagavad Gita, the next verse, 10, he's saying, if you cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. And what does that work look like? That work looks like in the Varnashram system. This is also Dharma. Working for Krishna is also Dharma. It is third class Dharma. Third class Dharma is working for Krishna. Second class Dharma is following the rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga. First class Dharma is pure love of God. So even in the Varnashram system, there are rules and regulations. Even if you look at the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras also go through purification. Yeah. Does anybody know what purification do Shudras go through? No. Hard labor. That's one type of purification. But Shudras go through marriage. They don't go through Vanaprastha or Sannyas or Brahmachari. They just go through marriage ceremony. And a lot of people, the tendency now is to not even get married. Those actually they're not even qualified to call them Shudras. They may be called something even lower than that. Chandalas Chandalas are people even outside of the Varnashram system. And Kshatriyas, there's this famous painting of Yudhishthira Maharaj. Prabhupada was presented with this picture, and I think it was painted by Parikshit or Jalarani or one of the painters. And it had Yudhishthira Maharaj having a three-dandi sannyasi when he's leaving for the forest. And Prabhupada said this is not proper. He said Yudhishthira Maharaj is a Kshatriya, and Kshatriyas don't go through sannyas. They just take vanaprastha. So if you look at first canto, 14th chapter, Disappearance of Lord Krishna, and the Pandavas timely retire. Yudhishthira and Arjuna, they're leaving. It's time to move on. So another aspect of this verse is Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is being described as a very ghostly figure. A lot of ghosts around him. So this is Shiva in this material world. If we read the 5th canto, even the cover of the 5th canto, there's the Rudras. Lord Shiva is Shambhu. That's in the material world, he incarnates as the 11 Rudras. And he is not actually Jiva Tattva. He's very different from us. Lord Shiva is not somebody that we can become or anything like that. He is his own Tattva. Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions in one of his books that there are 4 tattvas that we are not able to fully comprehend. One of them is Jiva Tattva, one of them is Krishna Tattva, one of them is Radha Tattva, and one of them is Shiva Tattva. So these 4 tattvas we are not able to completely understand them. But Lord Brahma, being very merciful, he gives us a helping hand on how to understand Lord Shiva. And if you know this verse, we can chant it right now. This is from Brahma Samhita. Shiram yata dadi vikara vishesha yogat sanjayate nahi tata pratagasti heto ya shambhutam api tata samupaiti karyad govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. This is the translation by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Just as milk is transformed into curd by the action of acids, but yet the effect of curd is neither same as nor different from its cause, milk. So I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, of whom the state of Shambhu is a transformation for the performance of the work of destruction. So you can make 1 gallon, 5 gallons of milk, you can make into dahi. You can make by putting acids or even a little bit of yogurt, and you can make that into dahi. There's a good process. But no matter how much dahi you have, yogurt, you can never make it back to milk. So Lord Shiva is one of the guna avatars of Krishna. Does anybody know the other 2 guna avatars? No? Noah? Guna avatars. Brahma and Vishnu. They are representative of Krishna in the material world. So Lord Shiva is a representative of the mode of ignorance. But actually, how can we say Lord Shiva is Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu? How can we call him as a mode of ignorance? He's not in the mode of ignorance if you look at it factually. If you remember our reading of Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Lord Shiva is by Narada Muni is coming first to Brahmana. He goes to South India, goes to the Brahmana, then he goes to the king, and then he approaches Lord Shiva as one of the topmost devotees. He's looking for the topmost devotee. Who is the topmost devotee? And so Lord Shiva is one of the topmost devotees. He's like, Lord Shiva, you're the top. You must be the topmost devotee. And Lord Shiva says, no, I'm in the mode of ignorance. How can I be the topmost devotee? And who does Lord Shiva point to? He says, go check out Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj. And actually, one understanding of this Brihad Bhagavatamrita is each devotee is saying that he's not qualified. That's actually their qualification. Because a real devotee thinks they're actually not very qualified. That those who think they're qualified are actually not very qualified. Those who think that they're not so qualified, they actually have the ultimate qualification. And what Prahlad Maharaj, I think he says something very comical. He says, when Narada Muni approaches Prahlad Maharaj, he said, I can't even offer a garland to Lord Nrsingadev. I couldn't even offer a garland to when my Supreme Personality of Godhead came out of a pillar. I just folded my hands and I said some words, but he came out of a pillar. I couldn't even offer him a garland. You know what Lord Nrsingadev had to do? He had to take my father's intestines and make his own garland. So that's Lord Shiva. So he says Prahlad Maharaj is actually a greater Vaishnava than him. And I think Prahlad Maharaj goes on to say, Narada Muni, does he say? He's like, actually, because Prahlad Maharaj's spiritual master is actually Narada Muni. So he's like, actually, who am I? It's actually you. You're the greatest devotee. So Lord Shiva is actually a great devotee, but in this circumstance, because he is accompanied by his ghouls and ghosts and bulls, we can understand that it's not a very good time for conceiving a child. Lord Shiva is actually worshipped a lot, even in our Vaishnav philosophy. We go to Vrindavan. There's Gopeshwar Mahadev. Everybody been to Gopeshwar Mahadev? No, you been to Gopeshwar Mahadev? Gopeshwar Mahadev is such a beautiful story that Lord Shiva wants to enter the Rasa dance, and only females can enter the Rasa dance. Actually, if you think about it, there's no such in the spiritual sense. There's no females and males. There's only Purusha and Prakriti. So Krishna is the ultimate Purusha, and actually we're all meant to be enjoyed Prakriti. So Lord Shiva is in this form of a male. He's like, I want to go to the Ras Leela, and he somehow disguises himself as a female and goes into the Rasa dance. But Krishna is dancing with all the gopis, and he's saying, I'm not getting the ecstasy as a Rasa dance. Then I think the story goes that Srimati Radharani approaches this new gopi and says, who are you? I've never seen you around here before. Who are your parents? And starts grilling Lord Shiva. And then in the story, in how Dinabandhu Prabhu narrates it, is that Lord Shiva actually gets roughed up. He gets slapped around, and his cheeks are red, and then finally disguises come out, and actually his third eye is showing. You are not just an ordinary gopi. But eventually the story goes on that Lord Shiva actually enters the Rasa dance. That's why it's very traditional in Braj, is when you enter Vrindavan, the first stop you make is Gopeshwar Mahadev. So you pay respects to Gopeshwar Mahadev so that you may be able to enter into the pastimes of Vrindavan. Even Lord Chaitanya, when he went to South India, on his travels to South India, he went to many Shiva temples, and he used to dance in great ecstasy in those Shiva temples. So, also I just wanted to, this final point in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is talking about Sripad Sankaracharya. Mayavadi philosophers are mostly worshippers of Lord Shiva, and Sripad Sankaracharya is considered to be the incarnation of Lord Shiva for preaching godlessness to the Mayavadi philosophers. But actually, Lord Shiva was Sripad Shankaracharya was not a Mayavadi philosopher. He actually, his final conclusion was Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Muda Mate. So he's in that bhajan. He's saying that don't worry about word jugglery. Don't worry about anything. He said just worship Govinda. So that's our praman. If the final conclusion is actually the praman. It even trumps what you said before. But actually the Mayavadis, I brought this up to a Mayavadi. You ever thought, what a impersonalist says about this Bhaja Govindam? So I went to one of my friends, he's a Shankarite. I said, why you think everything is going to impersonalism, but how do you understand this Bhaja Govindam? Anybody know the conclusion of this Bhaja? What they think it is? They think, so the story goes that Sankaracharya was walking, and there's decrepit, crippled old man was trying to read the Bhagavad Gita, and trying to read very some shastra, and he wasn't understanding it, and he was about to die. And then Sankaracharya says, "You great fool, you should just worship Krishna at the time of death. Don't worry about shastra." So in our case, we say that Sankaracharya was an empowered. He was Lord Shiva himself telling this devotee to worship Krishna. How they interpret it is that I want to seek forgiveness from Radha Govinda, because this is what their interpretation is. I'm not Mayavadi Bhasha Sunya. But their interpretation is actually Krishna is just an empowered living entity. He says Krishna is a very empowered living entity, and that if you worship Krishna at the time of death, you'll get some sukriti. So that in the next life, you'll be born into a good family, and you can actually attain impersonal Brahman. It actually makes no sense. The Mayavadi philosophy is actually it's very convenient in the. If you read Sankaracharya's philosophy, there's a great lecture by His Grace Radhika Raman Prabhu. It was given at ISKCON Silicon Valley. It's 3 parts. It's called Mayavadi Philosophy, what it entails, and how to defeat it. And it's 3 parts. One of them is describing what the Mayavadi philosophy is. One of them is describing how our acharyas, the 10 points that Sankaracharya makes. That is the basis of Mayavadi philosophy. Ramanujacharya, point by point, just absolutely destroys this philosophy. And even if you go today to, let's say, Govardhan Mutt in Puri, which is actually one of Sankaracharya's strongholds, they still don't know what to say to these 10 points, because Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya just destroyed them. And so it's a very convenient philosophy. So I would recommend everybody to go watch that lecture series. Very nicely presented. That the Mayavadis, they think it's very convenient that all the problems of today, every problem is that we see around us is because there's a difference between me and you, right? I hate you because you're skinny or fat or black or white or green or yellow or something like that. But actually, and they say the ultimate bliss is just nothing. You just emerge. And we all merge and become one. And that is ultimate ananda. But Dinabandhu Prabhu says, it's very rare that he gives a very good, he gave a class about this Mayavad, about destroying this Mayavad philosophy. And he said, hey Baba, all happiness in this world is because there's a difference between us too. You may like strawberry ice cream, I like vanilla ice cream. And so actually the joy is in the differences. So how can you just negate all our problems is because of differences, but all our happiness is because of differences. So it's kind of a very thin line. So we can understand that this impersonalist philosophy, and that's just, if we understand the root of impersonalism, of Sankaracharya's impersonalism, then all these other watering downs of impersonalism they're very easy to kind of say that they're nonsense. And actually, if you look at from Sankaracharya's point, there's only sannyas. 5th canto of Bhagavatam says that Mahatmas can also be impersonalists, and they're very strict in their sadhana. They follow very strong rules. So when we see Mayavadis, they have a Mayavad philosophy. Like I met someone at Union Square, and he was basically speaking like Mayavad philosophy, but he was also smoking a blunt, and also has a woman around his arm. So you can see that it's a very watered down of Sankaracharya's philosophy. But actually our acharyas, tomorrow is the disappearance of Srila Rupa Goswami. And Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatana Goswami and all of our Goswamis have given us such wealth in fortifying our faith. So that's actually something to be very proud about. By reading these great literatures of Rupa Goswami, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Laghu Bhagavatamrita, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Upadeshamrita, and all the plays and Padyavali, the compilations, these are something to be proud about. We don't have to be proud about ourselves. We can be proud that, oh wow, there are such great acharyas before us. There's Srila Prabhupada, there's Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, there's Srila Rupa Goswami, there's Srila Sanatana Goswami, the 6 Goswamis. And that is something we can be proud about. We don't have to be proud about our measly little accomplishment. Jiva Goswami, when he left this world, he wrote over 400,000 verses. But Srimad Bhagavatam is only 18,000 verses. So imagine writing 400,000 verses in his sandarbhas and so many things. So these are very empowered personalities. Even Sanatana Goswami has a very empowered connection with Lord Shiva in Chakleshwar Mahadev in Govardhan. In Govardhan, where the mosquitoes don't bite Sanatana Goswami because he was trying to do his bhajan very properly. So this is the essence of this verse. In the beginning, we talked about having why it's the progeny and why it's not a good time for DT to be doing this. Second, why the purity of women it's a very important thing to have. How religiosity is broken into three rungs. The highest is pure love of God. Second is following the rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga. Third is working for Krishna. And then we talked about how Lord Shiva and how he is to be understood in the Vaishnava context. And we brought up the Brahma Samhita verse and milk and yogurt. Then we brought Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So it's 8:55, and I don't think I can take any questions because all of you are my seniors. But I think I can try to entertain something. And also His Grace Ram Roy Prabhu is here. So any comments, questions, corrections, I would be open to taking them. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I think regarding Lord Shiva, when it is mentioned as Vaishnavana Mitha Shambhu, so I think that refers to Sadashiva, because the Shiva of this world, the Rudra who actually takes care of destruction, he actually can come under the mode of ignorance. Why? Because without mode of ignorance, he cannot destroy.
Yes.
And therefore, in different prayers, Brahma and Shiva also say, or I think in Brahma's prayers in 10th canto it comes, or somewhere else. Brahma, Shiva, they're also in mode of ignorance, but Lord Vishnu he doesn't get affected. So there's Sadashiva, there's one more Shiva, and then the Shiva who also destroys. So these are the three main Shivas. And only Sadashiva is like completely transcendental.
Transcendental.
So in my understanding, I think that Sadashiva is the one who is.
But this is indicating this is one of the Rudras, right? That was passing over
Yeah.
while in the Sandhya, while Diti and Kashyapa are having this conversation.
Sadashiva is only in not the spiritual world, but the in between, or he also comes material.
I believe he's in the spiritual world.
Sadashiva. Right.
So in regards with, you mentioned the Mayavad philosophy and the Sadhu Mayavadis. So what is our position? Like what is our basically mode of etiquette in when we meet such people? Should we somehow or other express some sort of respect, etiquette to them, or just like in terms of debate, like you mentioned, like for example, if one studies this seminar, like is that encouraged that we debate such people, or do we debate them only when we are challenged? What is like the general, like your position and the position of our gurus and spiritual masters on this topic?
Well, what I think Hansru Prabhu was saying, I shouldn't say I think because I have to end it in a causative. But what I've heard is that Srila Prabhupada says anger can be used in defeating atheists and impersonalists. So that's one way of looking at it. That studying Shastra properly, so that you can understand what our position is. Most people, when they come, actually our position is not. It's not Dvaita or it's not Advaita. It is Achintya Bheda Bhed Tattva. What is the Praman in Bhagavatam? Vadanti vat tattva vidas tattvam jnanam advayam brahmeti brahmatmeti bhagavan iti sabhyate. That there are three phases of knowing the absolute, and we can't say one of them is incorrect because they're all correct ways of knowing the Supreme, but one is more correct than more perfect than the other. It's like a train coming into the station. So three men are waiting at the train station, and one of them is just seeing the light, and then they've never seen a train before. He concludes, oh, the train is just a light, and he just walks away. Then the second man waits a little bit more and says, oh, then he sees the cars. The train is just a car, and he walks out. And then the third man waits for the train to come to the station, and he said, oh, there's actually a person inside the train. So the train is any of them wrong? The train is a light, the train is a car, and the train has people inside it. So, but one of them is their vision is more perfect. So, but actually, in the fifth canto, it's meant. Srila Prabhupada has a very good pastime. I was hearing in memories of Prabhupada, this Mayavadi sannyasi came to see Prabhupada at the manor. I think it's 1977, and Srila Prabhupada, they were talking a little bit. Prabhupada was very cordial with the sannyasi, and the Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada, the Mayavadi left a stack of his pamphlets. You know, we have pamphlets. Come be an impersonalist or something. Come and join our ashram or something like that. And Srila Prabhupada was very cordial. He said, thank you very much for coming and visiting. And there was no shouting match or anything like that. So once the sannyasi leaves, there's this huge pamphlets, and there's so many devotees that came, and the devotees of this impersonalist was also came, and then Prabhupada had this big bucket of halwa, and then he took the Mayavadi's pamphlets and put the halwa on top of it and gave it to everybody, and like that he even engaged the impersonalist pamphlets in this. And so I remember this hearing this in Prabhupada memories. So we should actually when we're having a discussion, we should be kind of weary when anger comes into it. So there's no concept of when having a debate, like when you're trying to understand something, there should be no anger and animosity toward one another. You're discussing philosophies. Srila Prabhupada, he would get angry at foolishness, but when he would not attack the person, he would attack the idea. So that many times in Srila Prabhupada's conversations, he would say, someone asked, what do you believe about Sai Baba? About this Baba or that Baba. And then he wouldn't ask, that this and that. He would say, what is your philosophy? And then he would say, and then the person, I did this once actually. In Columbus, we have a devotee. His name is Prema Sindhu Prabhu. And Prem Sindhu Prabhu was talking to this Sai Baba worshiper. And he was saying basically, and then so he did Prabhupada's method. What is his philosophy? In 20 minutes, he understood. The guy didn't even understand Sai Baba's philosophy because the philosophy it's kind of uncomprehendable that he is God, but he's also Vishnu and Krishna, and he's the next incarnation, but there's no mention of him in the Vedas. There's no philosophy, and it's just a description of a guy. So he could understand there's nothing there. And then just by him trying to explain the philosophy of Sai Baba, he actually became a devotee, and now he's chanting 8 rounds or something like that. So it's really he kind of played himself, So you just kind of like you understand, you get them to speak, and then they just understand. Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense. A lot of times it's because of emotion that people get attached to this Baba or that Baba or something like that. But it's once you try to play it out, write it down or speak it out, it actually doesn't make any sense. I hope that was kind of a long way of saying it.
Thank you for that explanation. I have like a little follow-up question. Actually, also like two-part. You mentioned that we're not Dvaita, not Advaita. We are Chinta Bheda Tattva. But at the same time, Prabhupada never mentions, right, that we are debating Dvaita followers, but we are like basically debating and destroying the arguments of impersonalists, right? So like we have more in common with the Dvaita philosophy than with Advaita, right?
Yeah, if you look at Jiva Goswami's Sandarbhas, he's quoting, the person he's quoting the most is Sripad Madhvacharya. And if you look at the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, almost a lot of the purports end in according to the Madhva Sampradaya. So you can see there's a relation. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did take initiation in Madhva Sampradaya, and he did have Venkata Bhatta, the Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, that there was a connection between them. Yeah.
And also, what is worse though, the impersonalists, Mayavadis, or the Sahajiyas?
I heard one conversation where Prabhupada, he's saying atheism is better than impersonalism. That was a real. That was really.
That's a different though. Atheism, like I'm speaking about Sahajiyas.
Sahajiyas.
Yeah, like the people who just completely make bogus concocted things and just play it cheaply and exhibit all these like made up emotions and.
Yeah, I haven't really thought of that.
Like the guy in Vrindavan who what's his name, who declared himself a Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the one that has that big temple. Kripal, like that guy, or like some other people, who just like that. There's now this offshoot sect. They call themselves like Kriya, something like that. The Paramahamsa, something Vishwananda with the long hair. Just love this thing. They do kirtans and that, and like many devotees get also like kind of bewildered by that, and
Yeah, so the question is, what's better, impersonalists or sahajiyas? I'm not really sure. Maybe Ram Roy Prabhu can add.
The Sahajiya is better because at least he's purporting or opining or coming out and saying that he loves Krishna, he believes in Krishna, whereas the Mayavadi does not. So the Sahajiya can be reformed, whereas the Mayavadi practically can't. And Prabhupada's referring to the atheist is better, meaning kind of more the agnostic type of atheist. You know, they don't believe in God because they haven't had the proof, or they've been just presented with all kinds of foolish and sentimental evidences and reasons, so they just scoff at it, but they're somewhat open if you give them the right information.
Yeah, well, that solves it.
Oh, and the Mayavadi pamphlet that was in Bhaktivedanta Manor, and that was earlier on, like 1973 or 4 or something. And that story is actually in the you said you heard it on the video, but it's also in the Prabhupada Nectar, which we take out to Harinam, and we have a book that was put together of 5 volumes that Satrumaj made early on after the Leelamrita was completed in the early to mid 1980s. So that story is in there. And I think it wasn't halva, but it was like some type of fruit salad or rasgulla sweets that were dripping. So he instructed all the devotees after the Bhagavatam class, hand out a pamphlet to each and every one of them, and everybody's completely bewildered, you know. And now everybody come up with the pamphlet in your hand and take prasadam. Scoop, you know. So Prabhupada was able to utilize the completely useless, nonsensical offering of the Mayavad in terms of his so-called philosophy for some practical good, that it could be used as a prasadam container.
Amazing. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki,
Jai.
Shri Shri Radha Govinda Dev ki,
Jai.
Jhulan Yatra Mahamotsav ki,
Jai.
Ekadasi Mahamotsav ki.
Jai.
Thy Gaur Premanande Hari
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 Bol.
Bo.